The Galactic Council had been watching Earth for a long time, curious and cautious at the same time. They saw humanity as small, primitive, and unpredictable. The Council was made up of many species, each with its own power, and they had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had faced countless civilizations, and most of them obeyed without question. But Earth was different. On a bright morning in Washington, President John Harris sat in the Oval Office with his advisors, listening to a message that had arrived from the Council. The message was short and clear. Humanity must stop exploring beyond its solar system or face consequences. John leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. He had always been stubborn and proud of humanity, and he did not like being told what to do. Around him, scientists and military leaders whispered nervously. Dr. Claire Thompson, a physicist who had helped design some of Earth's earliest deep space probes, said that the Council had the power to destroy them easily. Colonel Luke Harrison, commander of Earth's orbital defense fleet, said that humans could not match the technology of the Council. John listened to both, and then he spoke. He said that Earth would not bow to threats. He said humanity had the right to explore and to grow, and no one could stop them. Outside, life went on as usual. People walked on the streets, children played in parks, and cars moved through the cities. No one really knew that an alien council had just sent a warning, but John and his team were preparing in secret. In secret laboratories around the world, scientists worked on new engines, new weapons, and new shields. Dr. Claire Thompson had discovered a way to manipulate energy in a way the aliens had never seen. She knew it could give humans an advantage if the Council decided to act. Engineers in spaceports were building starships faster than ever before. Pilots trained day and night, learning maneuvers that even the Council's most experienced pilots would find strange and unpredictable. On the other side of the galaxy, the Council debated how to deal with humanity. Vorin, the Council's leader, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 3 eyes, frowned at the reports. He had expected humans to be frightened, to beg for mercy, and to obey. Instead, he saw confidence, determination, and preparation. He sent more emissaries to Earth, expecting them to intimidate humans into submission. They arrived in large ships that glowed in the dark of space. From orbit, they broadcast a message: Earth must comply or face destruction. On Earth, the message appeared on screens everywhere, but instead of fear, it caused determination. John Harris watched it with his team. Claire whispered that the aliens did not understand humans. Luke said the Council had never faced a species like this before. John agreed. Humanity was strong, not just in technology, but in courage. People around the world began preparing too, even those who did not know about the Council. Engineers, pilots, and civilians joined training programs. They built makeshift simulators, tested new designs, and learned to work together in ways that no alien could predict. They learned that their small size and unpredictable thinking could be an advantage against the Council's strict tactics. The first meeting between humans and the alien emissaries took place in orbit above Earth. John Harris, Claire Thompson, and Luke Harrison were on the main station waiting. The alien ships arrived silently, and Vorin appeared on a large screen. His voice was calm but firm. He told humanity that the Council would not allow them to spread beyond their planet. John replied calmly, saying that humans had the right to live freely, to explore, and to defend themselves. Vorin's 3 eyes blinked in surprise. No other species had ever spoken to him like this. He repeated the warning, louder this time, trying to intimidate them with his authority. John and his team did not flinch. Claire showed data of new weapons they were developing, and Luke explained strategies humans were practicing. Vorin realized that humans were not afraid, and the other Council members murmured nervously. They had assumed that humans were weak and primitive, but now they saw intelligence, creativity, and courage. After the meeting, John called for a global conference. Leaders from all nations joined to discuss the threat and what to do. They agreed that Earth would not surrender or retreat. Instead, they would prepare to defend themselves. In workshops across the planet, scientists experimented with new energy sources. Engineers built starships that could maneuver in ways alien ships could not predict. Soldiers trained in zero-gravity combat and emergency drills. Children studied mathematics and science, inspired by stories of human ingenuity. Humans learned that their creativity was their greatest weapon. They could think in ways the Council could not predict. They could improvise, adapt, and act together in unity. Even Council spies who tried to infiltrate human facilities were caught by clever traps. It became clear that Earth was not just ready to defend itself, but to surprise the galaxy. The first warning from the Council had failed. Humanity refused to be intimidated. John Harris stood on the deck of a space station looking at the stars. He knew the Council had power, but he also knew that humans had something the Council could not understand: determination, unity, and the ability to take risks that others would avoid. Claire joined him, showing new blueprints for energy weapons. Luke reported on fleet readiness. Together, they felt a mix of tension and excitement. Humanity was about to step into a conflict it had never imagined, but they were ready. Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Engineers finished testing new engines. Pilots practiced daring maneuvers. Civilians volunteered for tasks they had never imagined, ready to support in any way they could. The planet was alive with preparation, and humans had never felt more alive. For the first time, the Council realized that Earth was not a world to control. It was a world that would fight back. And when humans fought, they fought with fire, with courage, and with unity that no alien had ever seen. The stage was set. The Council had warned humanity, but humans had chosen their own path. They would not bow, they would not flee, and they would not surrender. The galaxy was about to learn that underestimating humans was a grave mistake, and Earth, small as it seemed, was ready to show the Council that it would not be intimidated. As night fell on Earth, lights shone in laboratories, spaceports, and homes. People worked quietly but determinedly. The first battle had not yet begun, but humans were already winning in ways the Council did not understand. The warning had failed, and the future belonged to those who were ready to fight. And humanity, for the first time, knew that no one could stop them if they stood together. Humanity knew that ignoring the Council's warning was dangerous, but they also knew they had no choice. On Earth, people worked day and night to prepare for what was coming. President John Harris oversaw everything, coordinating scientists, engineers, and military leaders to ensure every part of the planet was ready. Dr. Claire Thompson focused on weapons research. She and her team were developing energy weapons that could pierce the shields of the Council ships. They tested different power sources, carefully recording every result. Claire knew that humans could not match the Council in raw power, but they could win through cleverness, unpredictability, and determination. In spaceports, engineers built new starships. Unlike the Council's vessels, these ships were not huge and slow. They were fast, agile, and easy to maneuver. Pilots trained in zero-gravity combat learned to move in ways that aliens could not predict. Colonel Luke Harrison drilled the military constantly, teaching tactics that were unusual and hard to anticipate. He paired new recruits with experienced pilots to create teams that could act quickly and think independently. People from all over the world volunteered to help. Civilians learned to repair ships, manage energy systems, and coordinate communications. Even teenagers in remote towns built small drones and experimental devices to support the effort. Humanity had learned that creativity and collaboration could outweigh raw strength. In orbit, humans deployed early warning satellites that could detect Council ships from a great distance. They placed sensors on moons and asteroids, creating a web of observation that gave them time to prepare for attacks. The Council tried to spy on Earth, sending small scout ships and using cloaking technology. Every time, humans discovered them. Sometimes they tricked the scouts, letting them believe they were learning about human defenses when they were actually being led into traps. John Harris knew that preparation alone was not enough. He encouraged his people to be bold, to innovate, and to act unpredictably. He understood that human strength came from their ability to adapt and take risks the Council would never consider. Claire developed a weapon that could focus energy into a small but powerful beam, capable of breaking through Council shields in seconds. She ran simulations to see how it would work in space battles. The results amazed her. Even the strongest ships of the Council could be disabled if humans used strategy and surprise. Luke prepared his pilots to use these new weapons, teaching them to strike quickly and then retreat before the Council could respond. On the ground, factories ran non-stop. Engineers worked in shifts, designing engines that could handle long journeys and high speeds. Satellites were upgraded to communicate across vast distances instantly, and new forms of armor were produced for ships and space stations. Humanity's cities became centers of preparation, and people everywhere felt a sense of purpose. They were ready to defend their planet and their future. The Council grew impatient. Foreign and other leaders discussed sending a fleet to show humans their power. They believed humans would panic. that they would surrender when faced with overwhelming strength. What they did not understand was that humans had already begun to change. They had learned to work together in ways that were unfamiliar to the Council. They had turned fear into determination. They had taken what seemed like disadvantages, small numbers, slower ships, weaker weapons, and transformed them into advantages through ingenuity and courage. One day, as Claire tested a new weapon in orbit, she noticed something unusual. A small Council scout was nearby observing her work. She smiled and activated a decoy device that created false energy signatures. The scout recorded the false data and left, thinking it had gathered intelligence. In reality, the Council had learned nothing. Luke watched the test with admiration. He knew that humans were ready for the first clash, even though it had not yet begun. Civilians also played a role. Volunteers built shelters and supply stations on Earth and in orbit. Communication teams worked to ensure that messages could travel instantly between commanders and pilots. Young engineers designed new tools that older scientists had not imagined. Even children contributed by learning skills that would help in the future, and parents encouraged them, proud of their ingenuity. John Harris addressed the world through a broadcast. He told people to stay calm but vigilant, to continue working together and to trust in their abilities. He reminded them that humans had survived challenges before, and now they faced the greatest challenge in history. Yet, for the first time, many felt excitement along with fear. They knew that humanity's courage and cleverness were being tested. Weeks passed and the preparations continued. Humans launched test missions in space, practicing attacks and maneuvers that would be useful in battle. They learned to use the environment, the movement of asteroids, the shadows of planets, and the gravity of moons, to their advantage. They became unpredictable in ways the Council could not anticipate. The Council, on the other hand, underestimated humanity at every step. They believed that small victories, threats, or displays of power would intimidate humans. Each time, humans responded with more creativity, more strategy, and more courage. John Harris realized that humans had become stronger, not through weapons alone, but through unity. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and civilians had learned to trust each other, to plan together, and to act quickly. The planet had become a single force, ready to defend itself against the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Claire worked tirelessly on energy weapons, testing combinations of power and focus. She found that small adjustments could create enormous effects, giving humans a way to fight even the strongest Council ships. Luke trained his pilots to use these weapons in unpredictable ways, relying on strategy rather than brute force. Volunteers and civilians continued to build equipment, prepare supplies, and monitor space. Humanity had turned preparation into an art, combining intelligence, skill, and courage. One night, John Harris walked along the deck of a space station looking at the stars. Claire joined him, holding blueprints and notes. Luke came after, reporting on the readiness of the fleet. They all felt a sense of pride and determination. Humanity had taken the Council's warning and turned it into a challenge. They were no longer afraid. Across the world, cities glowed with activity. Factories, research centers, and communication hubs never slept. Pilots practiced maneuvers over oceans and deserts. Engineers tested engines and weapons in secret locations. Everyone, from the youngest volunteers to the oldest scientists, contributed in their own way. The Council still believed humans were weak and easily controlled. They did not realize that humans had already become something they had never faced before: unpredictable, inventive, and united. John Harris knew the first battle would be difficult, but he also knew that humans were ready to face it. They had learned to trust their skills, to act together, and to fight with courage. Claire felt the same. Her weapons could pierce the strongest shields, and humans had learned to use them wisely. Luke smiled as he watched young pilots practice daring maneuvers. They were fearless and quick, and he knew they would surprise the Council. Humanity's preparation was not just about defense. It was about showing the galaxy that humans could fight with intelligence and courage. They had learned that their creativity, determination, and unity were stronger than fear. The stage was set for the first encounter. Humans had prepared everything they could, and they were ready to act. The Council would soon see that Earth was not a world to control. It was a world that would defend itself with everything it had, and humans had learned that even against a powerful enemy, they could survive and fight back. The first clash had not yet begun, but humanity had already won something far more important: confidence, unity, and the belief that they could face any challenge together. And as the stars shone above Earth, humans continued to prepare, ready for the day when their courage and ingenuity would be tested against the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The first clash with the Council's forces came suddenly. Early one morning, alarms blared across Earth's orbital stations. Sensors had detected a fleet of Council ships moving toward the planet. Colonel Luke Harrison quickly mobilized the human fleet. Pilots scrambled to their ships, engineers ran final system checks, and communications officers transmitted coordinates and attack plans. On the ground, civilians watched the sky, waiting, anxious yet ready. John Harris and Dr. Claire Thompson monitored the situation from the command center. Claire checked energy levels and weapons readiness while John coordinated the overall strategy. The Council fleet was massive, their ships shining like stars in the dark of space. They had expected humans to panic, to retreat, and to surrender. They were wrong. Luke Harrison led the human fleet out of orbit, flying smaller, faster ships that moved unpredictably. The Council ships fired their energy beams, trying to break the human lines, but humans used clever maneuvers and the shadows of asteroids to hide and evade. Claire activated the new weapon she'd developed, focusing energy beams on the Council shields. The beams pierced the strongest defenses, causing explosions that lit up space. The Council commanders were shocked. They had never seen humans fight like this. The humans were not only brave, they were inventive. Small groups of pilots attacked from unexpected directions, while other ships feigned retreat only to return and strike again. Civilians in command centers guided pilots through new strategies in real time, and volunteers coordinated supply lines for repairs and reinforcements. Even inexperienced pilots contributed, using daring moves that the Council could not predict. John Harris remained calm, directing resources and keeping the fleet coordinated. He knew that losing even a single ship could be dangerous, but he also knew that humans had an advantage in thinking outside the rules. One young pilot, Megan Carter, flew her ship through a narrow asteroid field, surprising a Council cruiser. Using her speed and clever timing, she disabled the cruiser's engines before anyone else could respond. Engineers on other ships quickly repaired minor damage, keeping the fleet in the fight. Claire's energy weapons were crucial, but so were the humans' tactics. They attacked weak points, retreated to safety, and struck again. The Council had never faced an enemy that adapted so quickly. Frin watched the battle from the Council command center. His three eyes widened as reports came in. Human ships were destroying cruisers thought to be indestructible. Small groups of humans were outmaneuvering entire squadrons. He realized that humans were not just fighting. They were learning, adapting, and using creativity as a weapon. On Earth, people cheered when news of successful strikes reached them. Even though many were far from the front lines, they felt part of the fight. Engineers and scientists continued to improve weapons and systems as the battle went on. Civilians monitored communications, relaying information to commanders and pilots. The battle continued for hours. Human ships darted between planets, through asteroid belts, and around moons. They struck at Council supply ships, communication arrays, and isolated cruisers. Every move seemed chaotic, yet it was coordinated and smart. Luke Harrison guided pilots through every maneuver, teaching them to stay calm, think quickly, and trust each other. The Council attempted to use larger ships to overwhelm humans, but each strategy failed. Humans anticipated their moves or reacted in ways that were impossible to predict. Claire's energy weapons kept striking critical points, and John Harris coordinated with ground stations to adjust strategies in real time. The Council fleet began to lose morale. Their commanders were unsure how to respond. Humans, though outnumbered, continued to fight with courage, ingenuity, and determination. One Council ship tried to capture a human command station in orbit. Luke led a small team of ships in a daring attack, distracting the Council while engineers quickly reinforced the station's defenses. The Council ships fired repeatedly, but humans were always one step ahead. Megan Carter destroyed a second cruiser by targeting its engines at a weak angle no one had noticed. Small victories kept humans motivated and Council forces in confusion. On Earth, people waited anxiously for updates. Families, workers, and volunteers followed the battle through live transmissions. Every successful maneuver, every victory strengthened their resolve. Humans were proving to themselves and the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The Council tried sending reinforcements, but humans anticipated the routes and used ambushes to weaken them before they could reach the main fleet. The humans' adaptability frustrated the Council, who relied on predictable tactics. John Harris knew this was only the beginning, but he also knew that confidence mattered. Humanity had survived its first major battle and had inflicted significant damage. Claire monitored energy reserves and weapon status, making small adjustments to ensure that the fleet remained effective. Luke continued to inspire his pilots, reminding them to stay focused, use their creativity, and trust each other. Across the galaxy, Council species began to question their leadership. They had assumed that humans were weak, primitive, and obedient. They were wrong. Humans fought with intelligence, courage, and unpredictability that no alien had faced before. By the time the Council fleet began to retreat, humans had achieved more than expected. Several cruisers were disabled, supply lines disrupted, and morale of the Council troops shaken. Human pilots returned to base, exhausted but proud. John Harris addressed the team, praising their efforts and reminding them that unity and creativity had won this battle. Claire smiled, knowing that their weapons had made a difference, but also realizing that humans' thinking and bravery had been the true key. Luke Harrison debriefed the pilots, pointing out successful tactics and lessons learned. Even the youngest and least experienced pilots had contributed to the victory, proving that courage and ingenuity mattered more than experience alone. Across Earth, people celebrated cautiously. They knew the Council would not give up, but they also knew that humanity had proven it could fight back. They had learned that preparation, teamwork, and creativity could overcome even the most powerful enemies. Vorin and the Council leaders were forced to rethink their assumptions. Humans were not weak. Humans were dangerous in ways that could not be measured by technology alone. They had courage, intelligence, and unity. And worst of all for the Council, humans could adapt quickly and unpredictably. That first clash had taught them a lesson they would not forget. Humans had fought their first battle and had survived. They had inflicted damage, learned new strategies, and gained confidence. Humanity had shown that even against a superior enemy, they could win with ingenuity, unity, and courage. On Earth, the people prepared for the next encounter. Factories and laboratories worked to repair ships, improve weapons, and train more pilots. Civilians volunteered in record numbers, ready to contribute to the war effort in any way they could. John Harris, Claire Thompson, and Luke Harrison planned their next moves, knowing that the Council would strike again. But they also knew that humans had an advantage. They were unpredictable, inventive, and united. They were ready to face whatever came next, and they were determined to show the Council that Earth would never bow. The first clash had not only tested humanity's skill, but had proven their spirit. They had learned that courage, teamwork, and intelligence could overcome fear, and they had gained confidence that would carry them into future battles. Humanity had begun to change. They had become stronger, wiser, and more determined. And as they looked at the stars, humans knew that the galaxy was watching. The Council had underestimated them, and that mistake would not be forgotten. Earth had shown that it could fight back, and it had done so with creativity, courage, and unity that no alien had ever seen before. The first clash was only the beginning, but it had already changed the course of history, proving that humans were not just survivors. They were fighters, thinkers, and beings who could rise above any challenge, no matter how powerful the enemy seemed. After the first clash, humanity knew that the Council would not stop. They had proven themselves capable of fighting, but the real challenge was still ahead. John Harris gathered his team in the command center. Claire Thompson displayed reports from engineers and scientists. Luke Harrison reviewed the readiness of the fleet. They all agreed that the next move had to be more than defense. Humanity would take the fight to Council-controlled space. Preparations began immediately. Starships were repaired, weapons upgraded, and new pilots trained. Engineers improved engines, making ships faster and more maneuverable. Claire worked on advanced energy weapons, combining power and precision to target Council ships' weak points. Luke trained pilots in new tactics using simulations and real space exercises. Civilians contributed by building drones, maintaining systems, and coordinating communications. Everyone had a role, and everyone knew that the galaxy was watching. Once ready, humanity launched its first counteroffensive beyond the solar system. Small groups of ships moved quickly, striking supply lines, communication hubs, and isolated Council stations. Using the knowledge gained from the first clash, humans exploited weaknesses that the Council had never expected. Pilots darted through asteroid fields, used gravity wells of planets to change speed, and attacked from unexpected angles. Each strike was precise and coordinated. Megan Carter led one of the most daring missions, navigating through a dense asteroid belt to reach a Council supply station. Using her speed and skill, she disabled its engines and communications before Council forces could respond. Sam Lewis, an engineer on a human starship, developed a virus capable of disrupting Council control networks. He and his team uploaded the virus to Council satellites, creating confusion in their fleet. Ships lost coordination, signals failed, and Council commanders struggled to regain control. John Harris watched it all, coordinating with ground stations and fleet commanders. He knew that humans were not just winning through weapons, they were winning through intelligence, creativity, and unity. Claire monitored energy levels and weapon status, making adjustments in real time. Every human ship had to work perfectly, and every pilot had to act decisively. Civilians on the ground supported the missions, providing updates, managing resources, and ensuring that supply lines remained intact. The Council was shocked. Vorin and his advisors had never faced an enemy that could strike so efficiently and unpredictably. Their reinforcements were being delayed, supplies cut off, and communication lines compromised. They had assumed humans would retreat, but humans had become an unstoppable force, striking where it hurt most. Pilots returned to base after each mission, exhausted but proud. Every success boosted morale, and even minor victories were celebrated. Luke Harrison reminded his teams that courage and skill were their greatest weapons. They had proven that humans could adapt to any situation, and that unpredictability gave them an advantage over a technologically superior enemy. Claire and her team continued to improve weapons and systems. Each new mission provided data, allowing them to refine tactics and technology. They learned from every encounter, turning experience into advantage. Engineers on Earth and in orbit worked non-stop, building new ships and repairing damaged ones. Civilians contributed by managing logistics, monitoring communications, and maintaining morale. Humanity had become a well-coordinated force ready to respond to any challenge. The Council attempted to regroup and respond. They sent fleets to cut off human attacks and protect their supply lines, but humans were always one step ahead. Using knowledge of alien tactics and unexpected maneuvers, they struck quickly and withdrew before the Council could react. Small squadrons disrupted large fleets, proving that numbers and power were not the only factors in battle. One daring mission involved a human team infiltrating a Council command station. Using stealth technology and quick thinking, they gathered critical intelligence about fleet movements and weaknesses. This information allowed humans to plan the next attacks with precision, avoiding traps and striking where it would cause maximum damage. John Harris knew that humans were changing the rules of engagement. They were not just defending, they were taking control of the situation, shaping the conflict to their advantage. Claire smiled as she watched simulations of future attacks. Every test showed that humans' creativity and intelligence could overcome almost any challenge. Luke led his pilots through night exercises, practicing daring maneuvers that no Council pilot could anticipate. Civilians continued to support from Earth, monitoring data, managing energy supplies, and repairing ships. Humanity had become a single organism, working together across planets and space stations to achieve a common goal. Vorin watched the reports with growing concern. Council leaders began to question their own strategies. They had never seen a species that could fight with such intelligence, creativity, and unity. Each human strike was precise, each maneuver unexpected, and each success boosted their confidence. The Council's authority was being challenged in a way they had never imagined. Weeks passed and humanity continued to strike. Supply lines were disrupted, communication hubs destroyed, and Council fleets weakened. Every battle taught humans something new. They adapted, improved, and used knowledge from each encounter to strike more effectively in the next. John Harris coordinated multiple operations at once, ensuring that humans could act quickly and decisively. Claire monitored energy and weapons, ready to provide support where needed. Luke trained new pilots, turning civilians and young recruits into capable fighters. Civilians worked tirelessly, providing logistics, intelligence, and repairs. Humanity had become a force the Council could not ignore. Small victories accumulated into larger ones, and morale soared. Pilots like Megan Carter became heroes, inspiring others with daring missions and bold decisions. Engineers like Sam Lewis showed that intelligence and creativity could change the course of battles. Humanity's strength was no longer just in technology, weapons, or numbers. It was in their courage, unity, and ability to adapt. By the end of the first major counteroffensive, Council forces had suffered significant losses. Supply lines were disrupted, fleets damaged, and morale shaken. Humans had proven that even a species considered primitive and weak could challenge the most powerful beings in the galaxy. John Harris addressed the leaders and pilots, reminding them that this was only the beginning. They had won battles, but the war was far from over. Claire and Luke reminded teams to continue improving, to stay alert, and to act with courage and intelligence. Civilians continued to support with dedication and skill. Humanity had become more than a planet. It had become a force to be reckoned with. Vorin and the Council realized that humans were not just a threat. They were unpredictable, clever, and determined. They had underestimated Earth and paid the price. Across the galaxy, other species began to take notice. Humans were no longer considered weak or primitive. They were a force that could strike, adapt, and win. Humanity had shown that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the most powerful enemy. And as humans prepared for future battles, they knew that they had already achieved something important. They had taken control of their own destiny, proving that they would not bow to threats, and that Earth was ready to defend itself at all costs. The counteroffensive had shown the Council that underestimating humans was a mistake, and humanity had proven that with courage, ingenuity, and unity, they could change the balance of power in the galaxy. After months of fighting and counteroffensives, humanity had proven itself. The Galactic Council had watched in shock as humans, a species they once dismissed as weak, clever, and undisciplined, had not only survived but had changed the balance of power. John Harris stood in the command center, overlooking reports from every part of the solar system and beyond. Claire Thompson was at his side, analyzing data from the latest missions. Luke Harrison briefed pilots and fleet commanders on upcoming operations. The Council, realizing that humans were not to be intimidated, had agreed to send an ambassador to Earth to negotiate. Ambassador Lyra arrived in a sleek council ship that hovered just above the atmosphere. Humans watched carefully, but they were not afraid. Lyra's message was clear. The Council recognized humanity's strength and wanted to discuss terms. John Harris greeted the ambassador on a platform above the city, flanked by Claire, Luke, and other leaders. He spoke calmly with authority and confidence. He reminded the Council that humans had the right to explore, expand, and defend themselves. He told Lyra that Earth would never bow to threats and that any attempt to impose authority would be met with resistance. Lyra listened carefully, understanding that humans had changed the Council's perception of them. For the first time, the Council realized that humans were not predictable. They were courageous, inventive, and united. Across the galaxy, other species began to take note. Reports of human victories, daring maneuvers, and clever strategies spread quickly. Many civilizations who had once dismissed humanity now watched with a mix of fear and respect. Claire Thompson explained the full extent of humanity's advancements. New energy weapons, faster ships, and improved defense systems had proven effective against Council fleets. Every mission taught humans something new, and every new idea was quickly put into practice. Luke Harrison reported that the fleet was stronger than ever, with skilled pilots, coordinated teams, and civilians trained in essential support roles. Even the youngest volunteers had proven themselves capable. The Council had underestimated humanity, but that mistake would not happen again. John Harris and his team negotiated terms with Lyra, insisting that humans be recognized as equals with the right to expand freely into space. The Council, still wary of humans' unpredictable nature, agreed reluctantly. They knew that humanity had proven it could not be controlled or intimidated. While Lyra spoke, humans continued to prepare, showing that they would never be complacent. Engineers improved ships, scientists worked on new weapons, and pilots practiced new tactics. Civilians continued to volunteer, repairing, monitoring, and supporting every part of the defense system. The unity of Earth had become its greatest strength. Humanity had learned a vital lesson. Courage, intelligence, and collaboration could overcome even the most powerful enemy. Each individual, whether pilot, scientist, engineer, or volunteer, contributed to the defense and success of the species. Across the world, people celebrated cautiously. They had defended their planet and secured their future, but they knew that vigilance was still necessary. The Council had recognized humanity, but the galaxy was still full of challenges. John Harris addressed the world through a broadcast, speaking calmly and confidently. He reminded humans that they had faced the greatest challenge in history and had emerged stronger. He spoke of unity, courage, and the importance of continuing to innovate and prepare. Claire Thompson explained that the work was not over. Technology would always need improvement, and humans must continue to learn from each encounter. Luke Harrison emphasized that training and adaptability were keys to future success. Humanity had changed, They had proven that even a planet once considered primitive could challenge the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Pilots, engineers, scientists, and volunteers had become a single united force. Their courage and creativity had altered the course of history. Across the galaxy, news of humans' victories spread. Other species began to recognize that Earth was not a planet to control. Humans were unpredictable, inventive, and strong. Some feared them, others respected them, but all knew that humanity could not be ignored. Ambassador Lyra left Earth with a message for the Council. Humans must be treated as equals, and any attempt to dominate them would be met with resistance. Vorin and other Council leaders realized that underestimating humans had been a mistake. They now watched Earth with caution and respect, knowing that humans had the courage and intelligence to survive and even dominate if challenged. On Earth, people continued to work, train, and prepare. Factories produced new ships, laboratories tested improved weapons, and pilots practiced advanced maneuvers. Civilians continued to support every part of the effort. Humanity had learned that preparation, unity, and courage were as important as technology and numbers. John Harris, Claire Thompson, and Luke Harrison reviewed future plans, ensuring that humanity remained ready for any challenge. They knew that the galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers, but they also knew that humans had proven themselves capable of facing them. The first major conflict with the Council had ended, but it had changed everything. Humans had gained confidence, experience, and respect. They had shown that even against a superior enemy they could survive, adapt, and succeed. Humanity's reputation had grown. They were no longer considered weak or primitive. They were a species that could fight with intelligence, creativity, and courage. Across the solar system, humans repaired ships, trained new recruits, and monitored space. Pilots shared experiences, engineers improved designs, and scientists worked on new ideas. Civilians continued to volunteer, knowing that their efforts were essential to the defense of the planet. The Council had learned a lesson they would not forget. Humans were dangerous in ways that could not be measured by technology alone. They were clever, adaptable, and fearless. They could think, improvise, and act as one. And the most important lesson was that humans would never bow to threats. As night fell on Earth, lights shone in cities, laboratories, and space stations. People worked quietly but purposefully. They were proud of their achievements, but they knew that vigilance was still necessary. Humanity had survived, fought, and won respect. They had faced the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and had shown that courage, unity, and intelligence could overcome any challenge. John Harris looked at the stars from the command center. He thought of the battles, the people, and the victories. Humanity had grown stronger, not just in technology or weapons, but in spirit and determination. Claire Thompson reviewed new energy weapon designs, imagining what could be done to prepare for future challenges. Luke Harrison trained pilots, knowing that skill and courage would continue to be tested. Humanity had proven that even a planet once considered small and weak could rise to challenge the greatest powers. Across the galaxy, species watched and learned. They understood that humans could not be controlled or ignored. They were inventive, courageous, and united, capable of defending their planet and shaping the future. And on Earth, humanity celebrated quietly but prepared continuously. They had won battles, gained respect, and secured their place in the galaxy. But more than that, they had learned something that no council or alien could ever take away. Humans were strong, intelligent, and fearless when united. They had faced the greatest threat and emerged victorious, proving that Earth would never bow and that humanity would shape its own destiny among the stars. The galaxy had been warned, and Earth stood ready, confident and unafraid. Humanity had not only survived, they had risen, and the future belonged to those who were brave enough to fight, clever enough to adapt, and united enough to face any challenge together.